Welcome back to The Explainer. Have you ever noticed how some business frameworks look absolutely brilliant in a textbook, but then completely fall apart the second you try to use them in the real world? Well, today we're looking at one of the most famous models out there, the McKinsey 7S framework. But we aren't going to treat it like some static, dusty corporate checklist. No way. Today's Explainer is all about using 7S as a dynamic, living diagnostic tool. Because if used right, it can literally save your organization from a very specific and honestly very fatal disease. Right, so here's the painful reality we've probably all seen. You launch a massive digital pivot, or maybe you close a huge post-merger integration. The strategy is brilliant. The initial rollout? Smooth as butter. But then, almost like clockwork, exactly around the 18-month mark, everything just stalls out. The momentum dies. The targets are missed. So what does this all mean? Why do so many corporate transformations hit an absolute brick wall right at month 18? To answer that, we need a full diagnostic. Here's our agenda for today. First, the real 7S framework. Second, the vital split between hard and soft elements. Third, the fatal asymmetry rule, which is the actual root cause of that 18-month trap. Then we'll talk about running a diagnostic on your own team, apply it to a real-world Apple 2026 patient file, and wrap up with avoiding common pitfalls. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the real McKinsey 7S. Let's dive into this. Back between 1978 and 1980, consultants Tom Peters, Robert Waterman, Richard Pascal, and Anthony Athos realized something important. Strategy programs led entirely by formal analysis, reorgs and big strategy statements, they were consistently under-delivering. They needed a way to name exactly what was missing from standard corporate planning. And get this, the famous 7 S's: strategy, structure, systems, shared values, skills, style, and staff. They were chosen for a completely atomic mnemonic rationale. As Tom Peters said, they just needed them to all start with the letter S. That's literally it. It's kind of funny, actually, but it perfectly sets up the framework's true genius. Because the magic of 7S isn't the clever alliteration. It's the substantive, game-changing contribution that organizes these 7 variables into 2 very distinct categories. Moving right along to Section 2, hard versus soft elements. Treating your business like a patient means you have to understand a really profound split in its anatomy. There are parts of the business management can force to change and parts they simply cannot. So the crucial point is this deep contrast. 3 of the 7 are what we call hard elements: strategy, structure, and systems. These are tangible. You can see them in formal documents, and management can directly command them. Boom, done. But the other 4 are soft elements: shared values, skills, style, and staff. These are entirely cultural and capability-based. You cannot just change them by blasting out an all-hands memo. Management can't command them, they can only cultivate them over time. Now, even within those controllable hard elements, there are some tricky nuances. Take systems, for example. These are the processes by which work actually gets done. We're talking everything from financial reporting to hiring to performance management. Systems are actually the slowest of the hard elements to change. Why is that? Well, because they encode learned daily behavior. They're deeply embedded in how your employees do their jobs every single day. Meaning, legacy systems often stubbornly survive those shiny new policy changes you just rolled out. And then, sitting right at the core of the soft elements, we have shared values. This influences absolutely everything else. It is what the organization actually believes is worth doing when nobody is watching. It dictates what products get made, who gets hired, and what data gets logged. And let me tell you, it is the absolute slowest element to shift because it's the cumulative output of every prior decision the organization has ever made and reinforced. A CEO can announce bold new values on day 1, sure, but it takes years of establishing new precedents to actually make them stick. All right, Section 3, the fatal asymmetry rule. This right here is the disease phase of our diagnostic, 18 months. This is your ticking clock. In any major transformation, management can command the hard elements to realign relatively quickly. You can write up a new strategy, draw a fresh formal structure, map out an org chart, and deploy new systems, all within a crisp 6 to 18-month window. And honestly, it feels great. It feels like you're making incredible, tangible progress. But then, we hit this number, 7 years. While your strategy and structure shifted in a year and a half, the soft elements, skills, style, and staff, they take 3 to 7 years to actually catch up. And those shared values we just talked about, they can literally take an entire leadership generation to truly shift. And this timeline brilliantly illustrates the trap. Look at exactly where things fall apart. At month 6, your hard elements begin their shift. Great. By month 12, your formal structure is adjusted. Everyone in the C-suite is patting themselves on the back. But by month 18, the soft elements debt really starts compounding. The new strategy is structurally in place, sure, but the culture, the capabilities, and the actual people required to operate it, they simply haven't caught up yet. By month 24, the transformation success window firmly closes and the whole program dies, not from a bad strategy, but from the fatal lag of those soft elements. Which brings us to Section 4, running a 7S diagnostic. This framework was never designed to be some solo analytical exercise you do in a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. It's designed to surface timeline misalignments before they kill your strategy. So here's how you actually run the checkup. You start by defining a really clear strategic question. Then you recruit a cross-functional mix of 6 to 12 people. This step is absolutely critical. Pure executives will consistently overscore the hard elements because, well, that's what they control. On the flip side, frontline workers will overscore the soft elements because that's what they live every day. You need both perspectives in the room. Have them independently score each element on a 1 to 5 scale against the target state, not where you are currently, but the target state. Discuss the gaps. Pick a load-bearing soft S to start shifting immediately. And critically, you have to rescore at 6, 12, and 18 months. Let's see this in action with Section 5, the Apple 2026 example. Now, what's really interesting about this scorecard is the stark contrast relative to Apple's target AI strategy. Check out the hard elements. Strategy is a 5, structure is a 4, systems are a 4. They are world-class and deeply aligned. But the soft elements for frontier machine learning, that's a totally different story. Shared values are a 3, style is a 3, and skills and staff are lagging behind at a 2. So the strategy is totally set and the systems are upgrading, but the actual human capabilities and cultural style required to win in frontier ML, they're drifting. This scorecard perfectly predicts an 18-month trap if those soft S's aren't aggressively cultivated, like right now. Finally, Section 6, avoiding common 7S pitfalls. Just like any medical procedure, you need some preventative care to ensure your results are actually accurate and effective. Here is where teams usually mess this whole thing up. First off, they only score the hard elements because they're just way easier to assess. You absolutely have to force soft score scoring using concrete behavioral evidence. Second, they treat shared values like flashy website slogans. No, you have to score them by what actually gets rewarded and punished in the office. Third, they let executives grade their own homework on culture, which, surprise, surprise, always skews high. Fourth, they skip the 18-month rescore. That is the exact moment you need to know if the asymmetry gap is closing. And finally, they confuse skills with staff. Actually, let me clarify that. Skills are the collective organizational capability that survives employee turnover. Staff is just the individual composition of your workforce at a given moment. You can have incredibly talented staff, but completely weak collective skills. Now, it's also really important to know when to just leave this tool in the bag. Do not use 7S for pure financial decisions, like whether or not to invest in a new market. Just use an NPV analysis for that. Don't use it in the middle of a chaotic existential crisis. Stabilize the business first, then run your 7S. And hey, if you are a small startup with under 50 people, don't overcomplicate things. At that size, the founder literally is the style, the strategy, and the shared values. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocation. Think about your own organization right now. Look at your current digital transformation, your recent merger, or maybe your brand new strategic pivot. Are you just commanding the hard elements and hoping for the best? Or are you actively, intentionally cultivating the soft elements right alongside them? Because remember, strategy execution relies entirely on those cultivated elements catching up to the commanded ones before your window closes. Apply the asymmetry rule, diagnose the gap early, and make absolutely sure your transformation survives the 18-month trap. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next